Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When I bought 2 acres outside Brookpine Gardens, I thought I'd found freedom. No HOA, no rules, just me and my gear. But then, she showed up. Clipboard, power trip, fake authority. Weeks later, my workshop was gutted, and war with the HOA queen had officially begun. When I first bought the property just outside of Brookpine Gardens, I thought I'd won the damn lottery. 2 acres of land, detached garage, a sturdy carport, and most importantly, outside the claws of any homeowners association. No Karen with a clipboard was going to tell me what color to stain my fence or when to mow my damn grass. That was the dream. As a licensed contractor specializing in smart infrastructure and solar arrays, I needed a place where I could run my own setup. My gear isn't just a few screwdrivers and a rusted ladder. It's 6-figure machinery, diagnostic tools, solar inverters, laser cutters, a whole mini lab for prototypes, stuff you don't leave in the back of a truck. So I converted the garage and carport into a secured workshop. Steel reinforced locks, 2 outdoor cameras, floodlights, motion alerts, and an alarm that could wake the dead. Paranoid? Maybe. But when you've got more money and tools than in your truck, you don't screw around. The first few months were smooth. I'd get up early, answer some emails with black coffee, then head out to the workshop and start prepping systems. Sometimes clients came by to drop off parts or blueprints. Once in a while, I'd test something loud, like the core drill, but I always kept it within business hours. My closest neighbors were a few hundred feet away and mostly kept to themselves. Retired types, dog walkers, the occasional cyclist too proud to use a real bike lane. Then she arrived. I remember the first time I saw her, mid-50s, platinum blonde bun tight enough to lift her eyebrows, striding through the gravel like she owned the earth beneath her orthopedic flats. She didn't knock, she didn't wave. She stood just past the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, squinting at the garage like it personally offended her. "You running a business here?" she barked. I blinked. "I own a business, yeah, licensed and insured. Can I help you?" She motioned vaguely at the carport and tools. "This is a residential area." I smiled politely. "Sure is. And this is my residence. And my land." "You're in Brookpine jurisdiction." "We have standards," she said, stressing the word like I'd committed a crime by existing. "No ma'am, my parcel's private, not part of your HOA. Check the county records." She paused, clearly not expecting pushback. "I'm Gloria Campbell. I'm the new president of the Brookpine Gardens Homeowners Association." "Good for you," I said, already turning back toward the workshop. That should have been the end of it. But of course it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, she started showing up more often. Once it was to hand me a pamphlet titled Protecting Neighborhood Harmony. Another time she asked if I'd consider moving my truck somewhere less visible. Then came the letters, official HOA stationery with a fake gold emblem claiming I was disrupting community aesthetics and operating unauthorized commercial activity. Each time I replied the same way, "Not a member, not under your authority, please stop contacting me." She didn't. Instead, she got creative. Neighbors began to avoid eye contact. A local Facebook group I didn't even know existed started sharing photos of my driveway, calling it an industrial zone in disguise. Someone left a passive-aggressive flyer in my mailbox comparing my workshop to a meth lab. Cute. I stayed cool. I had permits. I had paperwork. I had cameras. Still, something in the air shifted. It was like Gloria had infected the cul-de-sac with her suburban paranoia. One neighbor actually stopped by to ask nicely if I'd tarp my solar mounts because the metal reflects into their windows. Another woman whispered that Gloria told them I import hazardous equipment from China. What the hell? I figured it would die down. I was legal, I was careful, I was quiet. Turns out I underestimated just how far some people will go when they think a little power gives them control over someone else's life. It was supposed to be a quick job, 3 days upstate installing a solar battery array for a medical lab with 0 room for error. The kind of contract I live for, technical, precise, no HOA presidents breathing down my neck about what color my equipment cases are. I left early Thursday morning, double-checked the garage locks, made sure the motion sensors were armed, cameras online. I even told my buddy Jack next door to keep an eye out, just in case. I trusted the system. I shouldn't have. I pulled back into my driveway Sunday evening, dead tired but satisfied. That feeling lasted about 9 seconds. First thing I noticed, the gate to my side yard was open. Wide open. That gate had a triple bolt lock and a steel latch I installed myself. There was no way it opened by accident. Second, my side camera, dead. Not offline for maintenance, dead. Painted over. Sloppy swirls of beige house paint across the lens. Same story with the back camera. One was ripped clean off the mount and lying face down in the dirt like it had been executed. My pulse kicked up. I dropped my bag and ran to the carport. It was empty. No, not empty. Stripped. Completely cleaned out. Every piece of gear I had, gone. Laser rig, solar calibration equipment, torque tools, cable coils, diagnostic tablets, voltage meters, even the aluminum flight cases, they took it all. They left behind a single folding table with an envelope on top, weighed down by a brick. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a printed sheet of paper, watermarked with the Brookpine Gardens HOA logo, and typed in bold font, Notice of Abatement, Unauthorized Commercial Operation, ceased per HOA enforcement policy. Equipment confiscated. Below that, in pen, someone had scribbled, You brought this on yourself. For a full minute, I just stood there, trying to breathe. Not because I was panicking. I wasn't. I was calculating. They broke in. They disabled surveillance. They stole private property. And then they had the goddamn arrogance to leave a memo like they were parking enforcement. I went inside and called the cops. The officer arrived about 20 minutes later, a young guy named Rivas. He looked like he'd rather be writing up jaywalkers, but to his credit, he listened. I walked him through the whole thing, property line, cameras, the missing inventory. I gave him my business license, showed him my deed, pointed out the paint on the cameras. He took notes, nodded, asked the usual questions. Then he asked if anyone might have a grudge. Yeah, I said. Gloria Campbell, HOA president. She's been harassing me for weeks. Rivas raised an eyebrow. They said you're not part of that HOA. I'm not, I snapped. That's the whole point. He started to say something, but then we both heard it. Tires crunching gravel. A black Escalade rolled up, and out stepped the devil herself. Gloria Campbell, flanked by two guys in matching gray polos that screamed, Rent-a-cop with delusions of authority. She marched up like she owned the place. No hesitation, no guilt. Just indignation and that smug, pinched expression that made my teeth grind. Officer, she said before anyone else could speak, I'm here to clarify the situation. This man has been operating an illegal commercial business out of a residential property. It was deemed a threat to the neighborhood, and the HOA took action to protect community integrity. She actually smiled when she said that. Like this was some goddamn civic duty. Rivas blinked. You're admitting you entered his property and removed items without consent? We executed a community enforcement directive, Gloria said smoothly. He's been warned multiple times. We acted within our charter's authority. I stepped forward. You have no authority here. My property is outside your jurisdiction. Gloria didn't even look at me. Officer, he's been aggressive, intimidating. He threatened to flood the grid with unlicensed power infrastructure. Those were his words. That stopped Rivas. Did you say that? She's twisting it, I said. I was talking about off-grid solar. Gloria cut me off. He told one of my board members he'd bring the whole system down if you keep pushing. He meant the HOA. But still, threatening the system is threatening the community. We were well within our rights to intervene. Rivas stepped back and looked overwhelmed. Okay, this is a lot. Yeah, I said. And it's going to be more. Because what she did isn't a misunderstanding. It's felony theft. I demanded a full report. Rivas promised to escalate the case. Gloria and her toy soldiers left with a few parting glares, and I was left staring at an empty carport, wondering just how deep this rabbit hole was about to go. Because if they were this bold in broad daylight, what the hell were they going to try next? 2 days after the break-in, I got served on my own front porch. Guy in a khaki vest handed me a thick envelope, didn't even make eye contact. Just shoved it into my chest and muttered, You've been notified. I opened it right there, still standing in my doorway, expecting maybe an insurance update or something from the cops. Nope. It was a formal cease and desist letter, followed by a complaint from the Brookpine Gardens Homeowners Association. Filed in the county court, Gloria Campbell was coming after me. According to her paperwork, and I use that term loosely, I was operating an unauthorized industrial-grade commercial enterprise in a residential zone. The complaint claimed I had created unacceptable levels of noise pollution, increased vehicular congestion, and, this part was gold, repeatedly made threats to destabilize community governance through rhetorical aggression, apparently telling her, bored that their bylaws didn't apply to me was now considered domestic terrorism. But the kicker, she included sworn statements from 3 HOA board members, all saying I had threatened them directly. One even claimed I told her I was going to burn the system to the ground. I remembered the conversation. She'd cornered me at the mailbox and asked if I believed in order or chaos. I told her HOA control was a broken system and that I wasn't. Playing along. That was it. No gasoline, no matches. I stood there holding the pages, jaw clenched so tight I could hear my molars grind. This wasn't just petty anymore. Gloria was going for the jugular. She'd stolen my tools, buried me in lies, and now she wanted to flip the script, to paint me as some rogue threat to her sacred garden suburbia. I was done playing nice. I called Kendra. Kendra Blaine was my attorney. A real estate law shark with a mean streak for bullies and a coffee addiction that probably doubled her blood pressure. I gave her the whole rundown. Gloria, the theft, the pain over my cameras, the fake accusations. Her first words. She faked jurisdiction and then filed a complaint to cover the crime? This woman's either brilliant or a walking lawsuit in heels. We met that afternoon in her office. I brought the envelope, my property deed, my contractor license, my business insurance, and a zip drive full of documents. Kendra read everything in silence, occasionally underlining something or letting out a soft, Jesus. You're clean, she said finally. Absolutely clean. And I think she knows it. Then why file this garbage? To make you look like the aggressor, so when you file criminal charges, she gets to say, oh no, officer, he's retaliating because we held him accountable. It's classic HOA manipulation. But it only works if we let her control the narrative. I nodded. So what do we do? Kendra smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. We flipped the board. By the next morning, we had our own filing, an official civil complaint against Gloria Campbell and the Brookpine Gardens HOA. Allegations included unlawful entry, theft of private property, vandalism of security infrastructure, defamation, and malicious abuse of civil process. Kendra also submitted a formal request for a court order to preserve HOA surveillance footage and internal communications. The moment the filings hit, Kendra reached out to a local judge to request an emergency hearing. Meanwhile, I filed a formal complaint with the police, requesting escalation to an investigator for felony theft. My list of stolen tools, backed by purchase receipts and serial numbers, ran nearly 30 pages. I even included screenshots from my camera feed, the few frames I had before the lens was sabotaged. But things didn't stop there. Someone started posting on the neighborhood message board, an anonymous user named Garden Shield, calling me a threat to the peace and values of Brookpine Gardens. They accused me of smuggling equipment, claimed I had dangerous chemical storage on site, and even floated the idea that I was running illegal surveillance on families. Kendra and I knew it was Gloria or one of her cronies, but proving it would take time, so I took a different route. I printed the full complaint I'd filed and handed out copies, personally, to every house that bordered my property. I didn't say much, just handed them the paperwork and said, "You deserve to know what's going on." Most of them looked confused. Some were embarrassed. A few apologized, mumbled something about not knowing the full story. But one guy, a retired firefighter named Neil, looked me square in the eye and said, "That woman's been itching for a crusade ever since her husband left. You just happened to be the target. So yeah, maybe the tide was turning, but Gloria wasn't done." That evening, a notice appeared taped to my mailbox. It was handwritten, but in all caps. You cannot hide from accountability. This community will not tolerate threats. No signature. I took it down, scanned it, and added it to the growing file. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about tools or turf. Gloria had declared war, and I was ready to fight it. The order came faster than I expected. Kendra didn't mess around. She filed for a judicial warrant to search the HOA's premises for stolen property, citing probable cause, camera interference, false claims, and the mysterious vanishing of $200,000 worth of gear. We had dates. We had receipts. We had motive, access, opportunity. And now, thanks to her relentless barrage of paperwork, we had a judge willing to say, "Go look." On Wednesday morning, I met Kendra and two officers from the County Sheriff's Department in the parking lot outside the Brookpine Gardens HOA office. White-painted prefab that tried to look official with fake columns and a cracked marble sign. The parking lot was mostly empty except for a spotless black Range Rover with a President HOA sticker on the windshield. Subtle as ever, Gloria. We knocked. No answer. One of the officers used a key from maintenance. Apparently, the HOA was technically part of a community services network, and the city still had skeleton access for inspections. Irony, thy name is bureaucracy. The door opened into a small lobby that smelled like carpet glue and printer toner. An elderly receptionist stared at us wide-eyed before stammering something about Gloria being out for a meeting. The officers showed her the warrant. She paled and sat down without another word. They started with the back office, moving methodically. Storage rooms, filing cabinets, a locked closet with landscaping contracts, normal HOA junk, until we reached the basement. The basement was usually locked. It wasn't now. Inside, stacked in metal shelves and plastic tubs, were my tools, flight cases, soldering kits, 3 of my specialized circuit analyzers still with my initials engraved on the handles, my battery bank cart partially covered with a towel. Even the motion detection unit I'd custom built with a 3D printed casing, it was jammed in next to a mop bucket like someone had tried to hide it at the last minute. I felt my jaw tighten, fists clench. Kendra squeezed my arm, quietly reminding me not to touch anything until it was logged. The officers began tagging items. Serial numbers matched my receipts. It was all there, but it got better. On a shelf next to the HVAC unit, we found a set of HOA inventory logs. In the latest one, a line item read, Technical Equipment Donation, Resident Contribution, Colton W. I pointed it out. You've got to be kidding me. Kendra didn't smile. She was already photographing every page. Then came the cherry on top, a stack of printed donation acknowledgement letters, unsigned, generic, meant to make it look like someone willingly gave up their property for the betterment of the community. One letter had already been filled in with my name, address, and a forged signature that wasn't even close to mine. My last name was spelled wrong. Idiots. While the officers called for an evidence team, I glanced at the far corner of the basement, where a beat-up storage locker stood half open. Inside, I saw empty packaging, boxes from eBay, labels for shipping services. My stuff hadn't just been taken, it had been resold, or they'd started trying to. I stepped back, heart thudding harder than I wanted to admit. Then I saw the camera. Mounted in the upper corner, slightly hidden behind a stack of ceiling tiles, was a small indoor surveillance cam. Active, still blinking. We told the officers. One of them climbed up and removed the SD card carefully. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't what came next. Later that day, when the footage was reviewed, it showed everything. The night I left for my trip just after 10 p.m., a white HOA-marked van pulled up alongside my fence. 2 men in HOA polo shirts walked around back with bolt cutters. The security lights flicked off, likely the breakers. They climbed the fence, opened the gate from inside, and began unloading my equipment piece by piece. Methodical, efficient. Like they'd done it before. The person directing them? Gloria Campbell. She stood by the van the entire time, clipboard in hand, barking instructions like she was organizing a bake sale instead of grand theft. There was no doubt now. This wasn't miscommunication. This was organized, deliberate, and criminal. As we stood outside afterward, sun glaring down, Kendra leaned in and said, "We don't just have them. We bury them." And for the first time since this mess started, I let myself grin. The warrant went active 2 days later. Kendra called me at 8 in the morning with one sentence. "They're making the arrest today." I was mid-sip of coffee and almost choked. "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew. "Gloria," she said, calm as a surgeon. In front of the entire board. And so it was. At precisely 11:45, 2 unmarked sheriff's vehicles pulled into the Brookpine Gardens HOA parking lot. Inside, Gloria and her cronies were mid-meeting, discussing, according to one attendee, how to rebuild the community's image after recent misinformation. She was holding court like a queen at a garden club, completely oblivious to what was about to hit her. The officers walked in, presented the warrant, and without ceremony cuffed her in front of the entire board. The cherry on top? She tried to claim it was a publicity stunt, right up until one of the deputies read her the charges. grand theft, over $200,000, criminal trespass, fraudulent misrepresentation of authority, forgery, defamation of, character, obstruction of justice. She went pale, then red, then silent. The HOA office receptionist tried to record the whole thing on her phone, but Gloria snapped at her. Something about lawyer privilege. As they walked her out, she screamed back over her shoulder, "This is harassment! This man is dangerous. He's destabilizing order." I couldn't help it. When the local paper posted the arrest photo, I printed it out and taped it to my garage wall next to the checklist I use for tool maintenance. Gloria Campbell, caught in 4 megapixels of justice, face like she just bit into a lemon made of regret. But it didn't stop with her. After Gloria's arrest, the investigation widened. One of the HOA's security officers, Marcus Dell, was picked up later that evening at his girlfriend's house. Turns out he'd previously worked at a storage auction company that had been shut down for shady resales. The guy had priors. Classy. During questioning, Marcus folded like lawn furniture. He admitted that Gloria had asked him and another guard to relocate equipment from a non-compliant residence. She called it property reallocation and told them everything was legal. He said he had his doubts, but hey, she was in charge, right? The second guy, Tyler Green, lawyered up immediately, but from what I heard, he sang too once he saw the footage, especially after being shown the eBay listings traced to his home IP address. My tools, up for sale, with blurry photos and faked receipts. Meanwhile, Kendra filed an expanded civil claim against not just Gloria personally, but the HOA itself as a corporate entity. Theft, fraud, defamation, retaliation, and, perhaps most satisfyingly, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The moment the claim landed, HOA's board turned on Gloria faster than a pack of rats on a drowning ship. Emergency meetings were held, statements released. One board member resigned on the spot and offered to testify, saying he had no idea Gloria was fabricating donation paperwork and that he'd never authorized enforcement actions against outside properties. Yeah, no kidding. But the best part? The county prosecutor took interest. Once the dollar amount and forged documentation crossed a certain threshold, it wasn't just a local matter, it was federal territory now. Especially when it became clear the stolen items had been listed online and shipped out of state. That made it wire fraud, interstate commerce violations. We were talking potential federal time. Suddenly, the case had teeth. I started getting calls, not just from my insurance company or reporters, but from neighbors. People who'd either supported Gloria or stayed silent now wanted to clear the air. I listened. Some were genuine. Others were just trying to cover their own asses in case subpoenas started flying. I didn't care either way. Let them squirm. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to see this all the way through. The last call that week was from Detective Reed, the lead on the criminal case. He thanked me for my detailed logs, my receipts, the camera evidence. Then he said something that stuck with me. You'd be surprised how many people get away with this kind of thing. HOA leadership, little fiefdoms, they abuse the hell out of gray areas. You're the first one I've seen document everything so tight, it made prosecution easy. That hit me harder than I expected, because this wasn't just about my tools anymore. This was about setting a precedent, drawing a line in the sand, and making damn sure no one like Gloria Campbell ever thought they could cross it again. The courtroom looked like every courtroom I'd ever seen on TV. Faded wood paneling, uncomfortable benches, buzzing fluorescent lights, and that low-grade tension in the air that makes your skin itch. The difference? This time, I was the one in the plaintiff's seat, and across the aisle sat the woman who tried to ruin my life with a fake HOA badge and a god complex. Gloria Campbell, dressed in an off-brand beige pantsuit, like she was headed to a discount political fundraiser, sat stiff-backed next to her lawyer, some local type named Vickers, who clearly wasn't used to defending felons who used HOA bylaws like blunt weapons. Kendra looked like she could eat him for breakfast. And probably would, if he misspoke too hard. The trial was a civil case. My lawsuit against Gloria personally and the Brookpine Gardens HOA as a corporate entity. The criminal stuff was moving separately, but this was personal. This was about the stolen tools, the defamation, the forged donation letter, and the mental warfare she waged for months. Opening arguments were brutal. In a good way. Kendra didn't hold back. She laid it all out with the precision of a surgeon and the malice of a prizefighter. The break-in, the theft, the The sabotage of my cameras, the fake inventory logs, the camera footage, the eBay listings traced back to HOA board members. She even threw in a printout of the HOA's own bylaws to show that legally they had zero jurisdiction over my property. When Vickers got up, he mumbled something about misunderstandings, overzealous community protection, and, my personal favorite, perceived consent based on prior non-objection. Yeah, apparently because I didn't scream loud enough every time Gloria drove past my driveway, I'd implied I was okay with them stealing my business. The judge didn't buy it. You could see it in her eyes, even before we got to the witnesses. We called Marcus Dell first, the security guy who had already rolled over like a golden retriever during criminal depositions. On the stand, he confirmed everything. Gloria told them to cut the lock. Gloria told them to disable the cameras. Gloria told them the equipment was a community risk and would be repurposed for neighborhood use. Vickers tried to cross-examine, asking Marcus if he felt intimidated by me during the supposed confrontation that never happened. Marcus blinked and said, "No." He just looked surprised, didn't even raise his voice. The courtroom chuckled. The judge didn't stop them. Next came the HOA treasurer, former treasurer now, since he'd resigned the moment the search warrant was served. He testified that he was told the equipment had been willingly donated by a resident for community improvement projects, but when he asked to see the letter, Gloria told him it had been lost in a printer jam. He said he never questioned it. He just trusted the president. We showed him the forged donation letter. He turned red, real red, like he was trying to internally hemorrhage the shame out of his pores. Then came me. Kendra walked me through every step of the nightmare, from the theft, the fake accusations, the restraining order threats, the anonymous messages on the HOA board. She pulled up photos of my gear, screenshots of the listings online, side-by-sides showing my initials on the same items listed for sale. She even showed footage from inside the HOA basement, the cherry on top. Then came Vickers' turn. He tried to trip me up, implying I ran an illegal commercial operation in a residential zone. I calmly pulled out my contractor's license, proof of zoning compliance, and a signed permit for limited in-home operation under state law. The judge glanced at it and nodded. He asked me if I had ever threatened to destabilize the community. I replied, only with solar panels and efficient wiring. Apparently that's dangerous now. Laughter again. Even the stenographer smirked. After 4 days of testimony, documents, video, and a complete demolition of Gloria's credibility, the case went to closing. Kendra was fire. This isn't just a case of overreach. This is theft wrapped in bureaucracy, weaponized by arrogance. And it's time someone told people like Gloria Campbell that their paper crowns and phony titles don't put them above the law. The judge didn't issue her ruling immediately. She said she'd take the weekend to review everything and deliver a verdict the following Monday. As I walked out of the courtroom, Gloria wouldn't look at me, but I looked right at her. And for the first time since this circus started, she didn't look like a president. She looked like a prisoner who just hadn't heard the sentence yet. Monday came slow. I must have checked the time every 5 minutes that morning, pacing my office like a caged animal. It wasn't just about the money anymore. Not really. I wanted the ruling. Yeah. Wanted to see that woman held accountable. But deep down, I needed someone with authority to stand up in a court of law and say, "You were right, she was wrong, and now she pays." At 10:00 a.m., I was back in the same courtroom, sitting beside Kendra, who was so calm you'd think we were waiting for a coffee order, not a legal verdict. Gloria sat across from us, stiff as ever, though the fire in her eyes had dulled. Her hair looked like she'd done it in the rearview mirror of her car. Her lawyer, Vickers, looked like a man who knew exactly how hard he was about to lose. The judge came in, all robes and tired eyes, and sat down with a heavy sigh. No speeches, no drawn-out ceremony. She got right to it. In the matter of West vs. Campbell and the Brookpine Gardens Homeowners Association, the court finds in favor of the plaintiff. I didn't breathe. She continued, voice flat but firm, each word landing like a hammer on wet cement. The court awards damages to Mr. West in the amount of $200,000 for the loss of equipment, plus $100,000 for emotional distress and reputational harm, and $50,000 for legal costs. Total awarded, $350,000. I exhaled slowly, but the judge wasn't done. Furthermore, Due to evidence of systemic fraud and criminal misuse of association funds and powers, the court recommends the revocation of Brookpine Gardens HOA's independent governance rights. A court-appointed trustee will assume administrative control pending audit and restructuring. Kendra leaned over and whispered, "That's rare. That's real rare." And then came the final strike. As for Ms. Campbell, the judge said, now fully staring her down, this court defers sentencing on criminal matters to the jurisdiction of the county prosecutor. However, I am forwarding a recommendation for maximum penalty under the relevant statutes, including theft, falsification of records, and criminal conspiracy. Gloria's jaw twitched. For once, she didn't speak, didn't protest. She just sat there, absorbing it like cold concrete soaks in rain, slow and heavy. And the hits kept coming. Outside the courtroom, reporters had gathered. Somehow, word had leaked, probably through Kendra's anonymous leak to a friendly local journalist who happened to despise HOA corruption. I didn't speak to them, not yet. But Gloria, she tried. She stepped outside, got hit with a wall of cameras, and sputtered something about protecting the community before being drowned out by flashbulbs and shouting. The county prosecutor's office confirmed later that afternoon that they were proceeding with the criminal case. Full charges, no plea deal. They had the footage, the financials, the forged signatures, the shipping logs from resold tools traced across state lines. Federal case, baby. A week later, Marcus and Tyler, the two HOA goons who helped move my gear, cut deals. Both pled guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony. Marcus got 3 years of probation and a permanent ban from working in any security-related job. Tyler wasn't so lucky. He got a suspended sentence and a fat fine after they caught him listing more stolen goods from a different HOA garage sale. Apparently, crime was just his weekend hobby. And then finally, it was Gloria's turn. In county court, she stood with her overpriced lawyer and tried to look remorseful. The judge wasn't buying it. 8 years. That was the sentence. 8 years for orchestrated felony theft, falsifying official documents, and abuse of organizational authority. The courtroom went quiet when the number landed. She barely blinked. Later, I found out she tried to appeal. The judge denied it personally, citing the egregious arrogance and absence of accountability displayed by the defendant. Poetic, honestly. Back in Brookpine Gardens, things fell apart quickly. The HOA board fractured. 3 members resigned. The court-appointed trustee started digging through records, and from what I heard, the misuse of funds went way beyond my case. Gloria had been using HOA money for personal spa treatments, landscaping upgrades at her own house, even catered meetings. The neighborhood newsletter, previously a monthly gush fest about community spirit, ran a 1-page apology and shut down operations until further notice. As for the $350,000, it didn't come fast. The HOA insurance balked, and Gloria's assets were tangled up in litigation. But between a forced sale of her house and court-ordered restitution, it started to come in, bit by bit. I wasn't in a hurry. Watching her walk into that courtroom in cuffs had been payment enough. A year later, the garage hums again. It's not quite the same gear. I had to rebuild most of my setup from scratch, but in some ways, that made it better. Newer tools, tighter systems, smarter layouts. I installed reinforced shutters, swapped the locks for smart deadbolts, and wired the place with more cameras than a Vegas casino. You walk near my fence now, it pings me in less than a second. I don't play around anymore. The first thing I put back up wasn't a piece of equipment, it was a framed photo. Right above my main workbench, hanging dead center, is a screenshot from courtroom footage. Gloria, mid-sentence, mouth twisted, cuffs just barely visible. Below it, I stenciled 3 words in black vinyl: "Never again here." People ask if I regret what happened, losing the gear, the time, the stress. The nights I didn't sleep, the neighbors who turned on me, the weeks spent digging through paperwork instead of doing the job I love. No, not even close, because what I gained was control. Not just over my land or my tools, but over the narrative. Over how far someone like Gloria can push before they get pushed back. After the ruling, Brookpine Gardens tried to clean house. The trustee appointed by the court gutted the entire HOA system, slashed their budget, froze their accounts, reworked their charter under county supervision. No more rogue presidents. No more power grabs. Some of the neighbors apologized. Others avoided eye contact and quietly re-fenced their yards. One guy, The same guy who once threatened to call zoning over the sound of my drill brought over a six-pack and asked if I could look at his roof for a solar upgrade. I said sure, then doubled my rate. Kendra, my lawyer, ended up getting 3 new clients from the mess. Apparently, HOA abuse cases are booming. She calls it the Gloria effect. There's even talk of a state bill coming down the pipeline, one that puts stricter limits on HOA enforcement powers. She emailed me the draft with a smiley face and the subject line, "Look what you started." I didn't ask for any of that. I just wanted to do my damn job. These days, clients still come and go, and I still spend most of my hours knee-deep in wires, converters, and panel grids. But every now and then, I get an email from someone across the country, people who've read the story, folks with their own Gloria, their own nightmare. They ask for advice, for a copy of my filings, for a lawyer like Kendra, for hope. I always respond. Sometimes I even send them a photo of the new sign I put up at the front gate. Bold white letters on a dark steel plate. Private property. Tools are mine. Land is mine. HOA keeps out. It's not a threat. It's not a joke. It's a promise.